One. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Grid Shift podcast. I'm your host, Alex Durante. Hey, quick word on the name for everybody. Think of a grid as any system that you run your business on. And the shift is what happens when a leader actually decides to rewire it. That's what the show's about. It's about forward-thinking leaders across all different industries and what they actually think about business growth. We talk about what they're building, and we got some cool stuff happening with our guest today. So excited to introduce our guest. Really quick before we get rolling, a quick sponsor read. This episode is brought to you by Axis AI. Here's the thing about most AI companies. They're run by people who have never actually run a business. That's what makes us different. We've built and scaled operations across 6 different companies. At Axis AI, we bring a level of strategy and we help you execute it. We don't just hand you a slide deck and walk away. We actually do a done for you solution. So we're brought to you by Axis AI. Without further ado, let me introduce our guest today. My guest today is Dr. Robert Powers, the founder of Eternal Vitality, a concierge functional medical practice down in Orlando, Florida. After 20 years in traditional and hospital medicine, Robert walked away from all that and he built a model. He built something around prevention instead of crisis management, which stuck with me in our pre-conversation. So today, Robert runs a physician-led practice built on hormone optimization, gut health, peptide therapy, metabolic care, a lot more, which we'll get into today. But he runs this entire business. He's built it really on organic growth, which is a testament to what him and his team do. He's built out his own tech stack to run this business. So, Robert, without further ado, very happy to have you on. How are you doing today?
Great. Thanks so much, Alex.
Absolutely. One thing you said on the pre-podcast chat that we had, you said we're catching people too late. You said that we're already catching them when they're sick, and it's harder to fix them when they're already sick, right? And that's not something that you personally enjoyed. And so that's something I want to unpack today. But I want to talk about really your origins, right? You told me you've seen some profound effects with some of the things you've done, obviously in your long career in the hospital world as well. Like you saw patients on ventilators, you saw, testosterone crashes we talked about, like hitting almost zero, dramatic turnarounds with certain therapies that you did. So I'm curious, that first 20 years, right? What did that really show you about traditional medicine, and what were the things you were able to identify to go, hey, you know what? I think there's a gap here that I can help fill.
You know, I, I think it goes back a little further than that, Alex. I was thinking about it after our pre-talk, and a lot of the reason, I always wanted to go into medicine. So I always wanted to go into medicine, and during my journey growing up, I was fortunate. I had a great primary care doctor as a kid, and was a DO. That's the reason I became a DO, by the way. And one of their principles is treat the whole body, prevent illness. There were a lot of preventative medicine. And so I kind of reflected back upon that after I was talking, and that kind of led my journey. So that was the reason I went to osteopathic school instead of traditional ND school. And then from there were family illnesses throughout my life. With my dad, I shared with you, my uncle, my grandpa, a lot of chronic disease in this. And that's kind of where those origins were built, where I saw he got sick and it wasn't prevented. And it wasn't really the fault of doctors. It was more the fault of the system, is what I've come to learn over these 20 years. And so fast forward, I go through medical school, go through residency, and I become a hospitalist because that was just what was right at the time. I thought, well, I can provide great care, I can help people get better. And I ended up in a kind of niche of the hospital world where I was in an LTAC. And that's a place where you take care of very, very sick patients after the acute care hospital, and they go there, many of them on ventilators and very sick. And it ended up being that really a lot of those patients, it was way too late. It was end of life care. It was some positive stories, but that's where I saw some effects of testosterone, as you talked about, where patients would come in. Traditionally, it's cortisol being very low, or adrenal insufficiency, we call it. And people would check for that. Patients would not be responsive, and they would give them steroids and nothing would happen. Well, along the way, we started checking testosterone levels. and guys would come in with levels of literally 25, 30. Normal is above 250. That's the low level. So with the permission of the family, we would start some, and these younger guys were waking up and coming for ventilators, which was
Oh,
remarkable. Nobody, hardly few people were doing this. And there are some articles out there that I found around the time, and that's the reason I did it. And so I was like, wow, if this is happening, why aren't we treating these type of things before people get sick, before
hmm.
they get diabetes, before they get heart failure, before they get heart disease, all these things? And so that's kind of where that origin came along. And through the years, I kind of burned out, to be honest. And a lot of doctors talk about burned out, and it's because of insurance, dealing with hospitals, all these sort of things. Mine was more frustration of the system,
Mm.
not really the insurance company. I kind of look at insurance as a barrier between myself and the patient that sometimes restricts what we can do. But the main thing was the system isn't set up right. It's set up to be reactive instead of proactive. And so through that, I started developing a plan to start what I do now with eternal vitality.
As you're saying all that, I'm wondering, was there a specific moment or a specific maybe patient or something where that all started to like come to vision, like where it really all started landing for you? Was there an experience or a patient or something that really pushed that through for you?
Yeah, I mean, I remember one patient in the hospital for sure. It was a younger guy, in his 40s, and they were going to withdraw him in the hospital. It's a true story. He was going to be withdrawn from care because he was on the ventilator, non-responsive, totally dependent. He came to us at the LTAC. The family wasn't quite ready, and quite honestly, I was going down that route too, talking palliative care with the family, these sort of things. And then I digging back through his history, he had a history of low testosterone. And
Wow.
I talked to the wife, and it was just buried in the notes. And I talked to the wife, she's like, yeah. And I was like, but he's not on now. And she's like, yeah, he's not. They didn't start it. And traditionally, they don't in the acute care hospital. They just kind of hold off and then you restart it outside. So I checked his level. He was one of the ones that was like 0. And we started him on some testosterone. And 2.5 weeks later, he started moving from the vent. 3 weeks later, he was off the vent.
No
He
kidding.
was discharged from the LTAC. At that time, I was going to skilled nursing facility. The family said, we want to stick with your care. So they went with me to the SNF I went to. It wasn't convenient for them, but they were like, listen, you got him off the vent. Let's continue on. That gentleman actually walked out of the skilled nursing facility two months later. And I was like, oh my
Wow.
gosh, this guy was a guy that was literally gonna die, and this happened. And that was a very dramatic clinical moment for me. I think the other part of it is just the barrier of, insurance and the medical world of patients not getting the treatment that maybe they need, or and it's not even the doctor's fault. We can't get it for them. And at that point I'm like, well, are we trying to change something that we can't? Because how can you fight that industry? But maybe we can work on the other end and prevent people from getting sick. Maybe that's my mission, and maybe that was my mission all along and I didn't know, you know?
Right.
And so that kind of went there, and I really got excited again about medicine. I really got excited about patient care, and I liked what I did. It's not about that. I liked what I did day in and day out. Um, but this has just reinvigorated me in a way.
You made a pivot. You felt a need for it and you did it. So
Yeah.
let's dig in a little more to that pivot, right? It was, if I remember correctly, you spent roughly like 5 or so years where you grew the group, the physician group that you're a part of. You guys were at like 4 clinicians. You guys grew to 30, 40 clinicians, I believe it was. More of a corporate structure, right? But and you just said a few minutes ago, like that feeling burned out or not fulfilled. Like, what was the actual breaking point? Was it a moment? Was it a slow realization? I remember you telling me about conversations you had had with some colleagues and stuff. Like, when did that pivot happen? And tell us about how Eternal Vitality actually started.
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was kind of two stages. So one, I was with the big corporate entity, and I was CEO of it. I was running it. I helped build it up, and it just it it just wasn't fulfilling me. We weren't doing what I really intended to when I started. And so I exited from that. And fortunately, I was able to continue on being a hospitalist solo by myself. And I was like, okay, well, I can do this. At least I can work on my own terms. It doesn't have to be corporate. I can kind of do things the way I want to, right? And at that point, I did that for a little bit, and I just had this emptiness where I was just like, this just isn't. And it wasn't the medicine. I know how to do that well. I can take care of patients and treat families the right way in that. But I was like, I just don't feel like I'm making a difference in a way, you know?
Mm.
And that's when I started exploring this other idea. One of my other colleagues, he has an internal medicine office, and he reached out to me. He said, "Oh, I need some help in it. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Oh, well, I had not done outpatient since residency. I was like, let me just see how I enjoy this, right? Before I go into this whole world." And so I said, "Okay, I'll do it. I'll do like a day a week." And so I started that. I did that for several months, and I said, I kind of like this. I can do this. And I proposed this other idea to him. I said, well, what if we do a kind of different model where we try to prevent things? It's not insurance based, and we work to either make people healthy or even prevent them from getting sick. And he's like, I love that idea. So that's how we initially started it. And we just started it inside that clinic. It was a clinic inside a clinic, and I leased some space from him, took a small part of it, and just started from there.
Yeah, the founder's origins, right? So let's talk about then the building the thing, as I say, right? You're running Eternal Vitality with one or two people, right? I know you have one person on your team named Rebecca. You're seeing patients, you guys are still growing. What were the things that you had to see operationally to know that, like, okay, this is going to work and I'm not necessarily going to have that same burnout or feeling that you had, yeah, after traditional medicine?
I think it was more the patient interactions in a way than
Ah,
anything else. Whereas, in this model, I can spend half an hour with a patient. That's our typical visit time is half an hour. Sometimes it's an hour, you know, and you know, hearing what patients say and their reviews where they just elicit them on their own. We don't even really ask. We may prompt them sometimes, with a text message. Hey, if you enjoy your
right.
experience, please share with other people, right? Those type of things that we all do. But to see the responses we get back, they're not like, oh, 5 stars, oh, I like Dr. Powers. They're like 5, 6 lines, how this has changed my life. You have to go here. These type of things. And for patients to tell me that face to face, saying, hey, listen, I never thought I would feel this way after 3 months. And that really makes it worth it. One of my first patients, I was thinking back, one of my first patients, about a 60-year-old guy, came to me low testosterone. And the reason he came is because he was having low testosterone type of stuff, but he was having erectile dysfunction. And he shared with me that his wife thought he was cheating on her. And it's because he didn't want to have sex with her. And it wasn't that. His libido was low,
Right.
his testosterone was low, and he was really upset about it. He actually started crying in the room. He was like, listen, I'm really upset. I would love my wife. I just want her to feel the same way, and things aren't good. And we started treatment. And about 2 months later, it was actually 6 weeks later, follow up, he comes back and he was feeling great. And I was like, well, how are things going? And he said, listen, I just want to say thank you. You saved my marriage. And I'm like, that's the type of stuff. It's not, oh, his testosterone increased to this or
Right.
whatever. It's that I made an impact in his life.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. I think that is really kind of the mission of this type of clinic and this type of work, because you can really affect people's lives and get them back to doing the things they love. That's the biggest thing, is it's what's missing from their life. Not, oh, do I have less fatigue or that, but, oh, I can go play baseball with my kid now because I'm not too
Right.
tired to work, or I can be at my daughter's cheer event. Want this mom she would go to these cheer events. You've heard of these before. They're the whole weekend, the big camp things
Right.
or competitions. And she's like, this is the first time I've ever gone to one where I didn't have to leave and take a nap during the middle of the day. I was able to hang around with all these high school girls, all day and do whatever they wanted to do. And her daughter was super happy that the mom was able to participate.
Right.
I think these are the type of stories that
They're priceless, right? You can't put a
yeah,
number on that. You're changing you're changing how someone gets to experience their life. And I mean, that right there, how could you not wake up and love what you do, right?
right. And I think kind of going back to the business side, I don't want to interrupt you there, Alex, but going
No,
back
you're
to the
fine,
business
please.
side, because I think you were kind of asking this. That led to organic growth. And then that's how I knew. I was like, oh, this is gonna work. Right. When I heard those
Ah,
outcomes, I was like, this is gonna work. I just have to get our name out because I'm confident with what we're doing here, our process, all these sort of things that we've done it the right way. And I probably took 3 to 6 months to really get our process down before I even really started pushing it out, you know.
okay.
So I would make sure that we were going to deliver what I wanted to. And I'm glad I did it that way. And I was fortunate that I had the resources to do it that way,
Right,
Um,
right.
I didn't need to turn a profit right away. So I had a different strategy than a lot of other people. And fortunately I was able to do that. And they allowed me to get the results I want. And, I have this little mantra up right above my workstation. Outcomes drive results, which drive everything else, right? You've
Right.
looked at the life. It drives reviews, it drives referrals, it drives
Everything.
revenue, it drives everything after that. So like
Right.
that's kind of where it starts for me.
So tell me about that first 6 months being able to set stuff up like we all of us founders know when you're, kind of launching things and getting things off the ground, something always breaks that you didn't necessarily
Right.
expect. What were some of those things? Now you took the time, it sounds like, to test and set up systems and things, but let's talk about some of the trials and tribulations, right? What broke in that first year that you didn't expect, or what had you going, oh, whoop, didn't think that was coming.
What didn't break, number one, is right. but but one of the first people when I first started, I answered the phone myself, right? You don't have anybody, you're not making any revenue, not anything, so you're answering the phone kind of. You're doing everything on your own. So then I was like, I have to have someone. I need someone. Someone. Do you want to be here? I think a week or so. And we both looked at each other and were like, this isn't right. And fortunately, I saw that. And so I had to reboot. And I waited a little bit and that's when I found Rebecca. And she's been with me since. And she's been great. And she's kind of a jack of all trades between the two of us. So a lot of tech savvy with her and you try to do that too. So we've created a lot of automations and things to help us along the way, but those have broken, of course, along the way, and we've had to reinvent, change systems, and it took us a while to get where we want to be. But um, you know, vendors all of a sudden disappearing,
Yeah.
having to get new sources, ad campaigns that just go nowhere, flushing down the toilet. We've all done it, right?
Yeah.
All of these things.
So tell me more. I remember we talked about go high level. Tell me about more about what you've done with, whether it's patient nurturing or lost patient recovery, new lead generation. You talked about, maybe giving someone a friendly nudge for a review. Um, being straightforward. Most founders and operators, right? They're not building out something in go high level. So like what made you go and build it yourself? Like I'm curious how to go high level come to be and what has it done for you guys?
It's been really great. So I mean, in the medical world, EMRs are not good. A lot of doctors try to use them as their CRMs. They don't even know what a real CRM is, number one. When I talk to most of my colleagues, and that's no disrespect, it's just not in our world, unless you start learning about it.
Right.
And I was fortunate to have a peer or friend that I went to college with, and he's on the business side. MBA, and we kind of laid things out too. And I kind of gave him my idea of, oh, well, I think I need to do a CRM and do some nurture campaigns. He's like, yeah, you should really explore that and treat this more like a business. And I think a lot of clinics don't. And that doesn't mean you have to be bad with patient care. It's just you need to do certain things business wise. So I kind of went on this journey my own. Um, I did try other things first. I was with another CRM first, and I just didn't care for it that much. And I was like, well, let me try and go high level. And well, truth be told, I was in a mastermind and I had a free account with Go High Level through them. And it was an older version and it wasn't that great. So I tried it. I went to another CRM and then I went back to Go High Level. And at that time they expanded some, redone some things, and it was pretty good. And so I just started doing some simple things, like put my calendar in there. So instead of running through the EMR, because they're great with communication and all these things, I said, let me put it all in one place. And I started running my just simple reminders to patients through that. So I would set up an automation to text them to remind, right? An email, hey, you have this appointment that. And then I was like, well, it'd be great if they had a little information before they got to me. So I started
Mhm.
doing some simple email campaigns and this sort of stuff to pre-educate them before they got there. And I noticed, hey, it's much easier talking to the patients. Like they kind of know these words I'm using, they kind of know what to expect. And then I kind of built from there. So after, along the way to keep them engaged, help their health, and they love it. They love getting things. It's kind of like the traditional newsletter, but it's just all set up for you from the get go. And and then even if a patient doesn't decide to work with us, we may re-engage them down the road to see if they need help or just give them information or this. And a lot of them come back to us.
Right.
I was sitting the other day and we got an email from someone I saw 4 months ago. He came in, had an initial evaluation. We talked a couple of times and he wasn't ready to do anything. And I was like, oh, okay. He emailed me out of the blue the other day and said, okay, summer's over. I think I might be ready.
Huh. There
I
you
think it's
go.
our
Yeah.
your nurturing, and that's the type of things that I see. And, you work hard to get leads however you get them. You should continue to nurture them and in a good way, not a negative way. And then people will come back.
Right. Well, and even there, I talked about changing the environment and the experience, but even the user experience of your platform and how the experience is before they even get to the office, right? I think that stuff matters. Now, you mentioned starting to integrate and use some AI to help you optimize some things. We talked about overseeing ad campaigns and things like that. How is AI impacting your business? What are you currently doing, and what do you see the industry really? How do you see it shifting with this whole world of AI?
Yeah, I definitely think it can help with front desk type stuff, right? Like handling phone calls, this sort of thing. We don't do outbound calls with it. We do inbound calls. So when people call, I personally still like the personal touch of someone answering the phone. I think that's best, especially for our practice. But there are times when you're either not here, right? Or you're busy and you can't pick it up right away. And before we handled it with some automations, it would text you back and say, hey, our team's busy right now. What's a convenient time we can call you? And patients did love that. That was a good first step. Now
Right.
we do the AI. So the AI answers, and with our branded, all of our branded programs, everything, the terminology we want to use, the way we want to answer things, and it does a great job. And it can handle a lot of tasks, schedule things, reschedule things, take messages, medication refills, these sort of things. So it takes a lot of workload off, and even just the office. Rebecca coming in the morning, not having to answer 20 phone calls, right?
Right.
That can
Right.
handle. So it frees up more time for her from an efficiency standpoint. So that's a big thing that we do. Second thing is we do have an AI on payments, so it does help monitor what our ad companies are doing. We do outsource that, but it does help and it does make things more efficient. And the ad companies have been very, very receptive to it. They like it because obviously, if the spend's better, I'm happy with them. So
Right. Right.
it makes their job easier. The other area we use it is in our webinars. So
Okay.
yeah, so we can do recorded webinars, for instance, like an instant webinar, a short 5 or 6 minute webinar off of an ad, and it'll moderate it. So it'll answer with our specific branding, but like say you're on there watching it, you ask it a question in the chat and it'll answer it for you. And obviously, it's programmed at some point to try to get you to book a consultation. That's the goal of the webinar, right? So, but it gives good information along. So those are the big ways we use it, and we use a company called Preside, just in transparency. That's who we use for this, and it's worked great so far. It's worked great so far.
I'm just curious, where do you think people are missing the mark by maybe staying on the sidelines with AI versus doing what you did, which is, hey, let's try some stuff and see what works, right? Where do you think that business owners maybe need to take that jump or that leap of faith and get off the sidelines when it comes to AI?
Think um I think just the knowledge is a little bit of a barrier because people are afraid.
Mm,
There's a lot of negative stigma right now about AI, right? It's going everywhere. So I think some businesses are worried about using AI in some capacity and being linked to that. But I think a lot of it is just they don't have knowledge of what it really can do. And I think if you use it the right way, it's beautiful. So, I don't use it with the intent of replacing people or doing that sort of thing. I use it in enhancing the current people it has, helping them do their jobs more efficiently and better, and providing faster service. So for instance, after hours, if you can talk to someone instead of leaving a message, that would be better for you, right? If you have a question on how something works, or if you need to change your appointment, we all do that. Saturday morning, they're like, oh man, I have an appointment Monday, I forgot, you know and you want to reschedule, so you just call and it reschedules for you. So, I think those are things that aren't that hard to get involved with that can really help, you know,
absolutely, I
without creating
agree.
without creating like agents to do work for you, what I mean? But I think it's the old adage, you don't want to be the first one on the bus, but you don't want to be the last one on the bus. And
I,
it's
I agree with that
you
100%.
got to dip your toe in it at some time and see if it's right for you.
Right, right. And everybody, I think right now there's so much focus on, ChatGPT and Claude and just using these large language models that people don't even realize, there's hundreds of other tools that you could be using that have nothing to do with a chat agent like a Claude or a ChatGPT. And so that's one of my favorite things that I get to do is be able to help businesses bridge that gap because there is a knowledge gap of like just the word AI. Like if you ask 10 people, what is AI? You'll probably get 7 to 9 different variations of what they think it is. And then you start to actually see how it can impact not only your business, but your life. Like the fact that I'm able to focus on more things that I love, that for me is where the benefit comes in, immensely. But I want to get into kind of what's next. We had talked about, you had mentioned potentially being able to add up to, another 200 or so full-time patients, potentially, as you guys are growing, bringing in another nurse practitioner to deal with that. Walk me through, like, how are you thinking about growth now moving forward, with the important thing of not losing the personal touch and the environment that you've really created.
Yeah, I mean that's really important to me. So, I'm pretty regimented about scheduling in a way. So I have certain blocks that are for new patients, I have certain for follow-up patients, and projected out when it gets to a certain point, I know that I can't replicate myself anymore. And I don't want to cut the time and get back into the old situation of, hey, it's more volume, more people, that sort of game. So at that point, that's when we start bringing in maybe other providers if we need to, um, where we can open up more time for people. But my focus is always on making sure there's enough quality interaction, because without that, that's what drives this model for us, is making sure
Mhm.
there's the quality interaction on the front side.
Right. No, that's why I said you don't want to lose the touch to what
Yep.
already got you here. But now I want to talk about something, a little bit more personal, on more of like the purpose and legacy side, right? You shared something personal on the pre-podcast chat with me, about your dad and your uncle and your grandfather, and that was a tough year losing all of them in a short period of
Mhm.
time. And you had mentioned that you think like we can prevent a lot of those things now with how technology is, how lifestyle is, like driving certain behaviors. I believe you were in your 20s, like 25, between 25 and 30. How does that history of having that personal impact with your dad and your uncle and your grandfather, right, when you're in your 20s, how does that show up now in the way that you practice medicine? Because I know there's probably something in there every time you're seeing a patient.
Yeah, I mean, number one, it makes me slow down and take time when patients need time. And
Uh,
families, on the hospital side, it always made me slow down and take time with families. And um, because I know what it's like to go through these sort of things. It's not the patient, as a family member too. But I would hear the struggles my dad would have, my uncle, my grandpa. And from a medical side, I would see how, you go in 10, 15 minutes and you're done. And, you know, if you don't get the right words out, the clinician doesn't know what to do.
mhm.
If the labs aren't there, that the insurance doesn't pay for it, it doesn't help. And so that's one of the things that helped develop this program is not is that we can look at things that traditional medicine doesn't, you know, things that maybe your insurance wouldn't pay for and do it in an efficient way, and hopefully the patient gets a lot more value out of it, because then you're not going to 10 specialist paying copays. You're not getting chronic medicine all the time. You're not missing time from work. You're not decreasing your your abilities at work where you can't focus and you're losing out on sales or you're losing out on deals. There's statistics out there that if you're not in the optimal health, that you could be making 25% less than potentially, and stack that up year after year, and then what you can invest that with, you're touching, over 10 years, easily $1 million for a lot of people. And so when you talk about investing in your healthcare going forward, it's not a simple thing of, well, how much does this cost? Well, there's a lost cost to it too from being sick, and then what's your free time worth with your family, and all these sort of things come in, and that's kind of how I look at it now. And so when I look at a patient, I'm looking at how can I help them be their optimal version. And so literally it's not, oh, does this patient need testosterone? Do they need peptides? Do they need gut health? Do they need to lose weight? I literally sit there and I'll be like, Alex, what are your three goals you want to get out of this program? And some people say, I want to go play catch with my kid. Okay, well, let's figure out how to go play catch with your kid, because your knees hurt, right? You have no energy, your knees hurt. It's multiple reasons, right? In reality. But how do we get there? And so then we develop a game plan of, hey, can we evaluate this? Once we have that, how do we treat it? How do we attack it? And then we keep evaluating it over time to get you there.
So before we have a tradition on the podcast, the last question, which we call the magic wand question. But before I do that, I want to give an opportunity for people to understand like who are the people that come to you and receive help, right? I want you to just kind of talk about, hey, this is what we do, this is who we help, and then also important, where's the best place to find you? Websites, social medias, where can people connect with you? But let's do that before we jump into the tradition question.
It's kind of different than the statistics. When I was in kind of these masterminds, people would talk about, oh, your core demographic is 50 to 65. For whatever reason, here in Orlando, our demographic is like 35 to 48. I mean, it's men and women perimenopausal, who we're catching very early. People are much more educated about this than years ago. And women are coming in, they're like, listen, my doctor says my labs are normal, right? They're normal, but I just don't feel right. What's going on? We kind of dig through it and we find some ways to get them feeling better. Sometimes it's long-term treatment. Sometimes it's short-term treatment. Same with guys. They're like, I just don't feel right. There's something going on, and we find that. So that's kind of our typical patient, that they're struggling. They're going through the system, they're getting the runaround. They're being told everything's normal, but it's not. I had a lady, the one with the cheerleading, the lady I told you. She had gone to rheumatology, endocrinology, gynecology, primary care doctor. She finally got her friend who was a PA to write some labs for some hormones, and she took them to her doctors, and they're like, "Oh, everything's normal." She came to me. It was all off. Everything was off. Her thyroid, her hormones, her gut health. Within the next few months, she was doing those things that we were talking about. And so, those are the type of patients we see typically. You can find us. The best way is probably just our website, I would say, myeternalvitality.com. We have a ton of information on there. There's even some quizzes and things if you want to do it, like hormone type of quizzes, gut quizzes that'll kind of give you an idea of how your health is and some good information on that comes out of it, out of the score and information of it.
Awesome. And as always, for everyone listening, we'll make sure we put the description to everything. We'll put the links to the website, connect with Robert via LinkedIn as well. So we have a tradition on the podcast called the Magic Wand question. This is how we end the episode. So for you, right, you had mentioned, continued growth, having more patients, being able to still be able to help more people. With that, obviously, comes more capacity and maybe hiring. So let me ask you this, Magic Wand. You could wave it over one thing right now that's slowing you down or holding you back. What's that one thing in business that you'd use the magic wand for?
Think That's interesting. I think the biggest thing is just exposure, and in two ways. Knowing that we're here, we're relatively young. There's a lot of places in Orlando you can go. I'll just be transparent about it. There's a lot of places. Um, but I also think exposure of what this world can provide to patients, not just about us, whether you come to us or someone else. I think this is a wonderful world that can change your life and change the trajectory of your health and keep you from getting these chronic illnesses and keep you from getting disease and trouble. So I think exposure in two ways of just the idea of what this world can do for patients because it's on the verge. There's still a lot of connotations about it that hold people back that I hear day in and
Mhm.
day out. But also just knowing that what this can provide to you.
Love it. Love it. Well, for everybody listening, our guest today was Dr. Robert Powers. Dr. Powers, is fantastic to have you on. I appreciate you sharing. I know you and I got to chat a little bit more, but even on the recording here today, being able to share some of those things that really impacted you, even the story about, your dad and your uncle and the things that you've been through, the 20 years that you spent, and then making the pivot. I love the conversation. I appreciate you coming on. If you want to close out with anything, feel free. Otherwise, we'll wrap things up here.
And thank you so much for having me, Alex. It was really great.
Awesome. All right, guys. I'm Alex Durante, the host of the Grid Shift podcast. Our guest today was Dr. Robert Powers, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Grid Shift. Thank you, everybody. Bye.